Alan is our newest owner of the John L. Scott Premier, which is right here in Newport and I guess officially in Costa Mesa. And he has 10 agents as of today. So I wanted to bring Colin out. And by the way, Colin's wearing another amazing shirt, which is JLS, sell a house equals get a raise. See that, everyone? And I'm wearing the JLS Contribute. You can find these on scottswag.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this week, I just want to appreciate all of you and all your hard work. We've seen an amazing upswing in sales across our entire footprint. And that's because of all of you, obviously. So first off, Brad Clayton. He started with Realogy in 2007. He held positions most notably as Vice President of Sales. He has personally, and I mean, hear me on this, he has personally visited 4,000 plus real estate offices through North America. He has done over 90 mergers and acquisitions to date and hundreds of valuations. He has 3 patents pending and an MBA in corporate finance. Rob Wolf, on the other hand, and the other one of our guests, has created and built companies in multiple industries, successful on exits, including software, media, and real estate. He holds 10 patents with 2 more currently pending. He is a nationally recognized expert in consumer science and behavior, and he has worked with P&G, Nestle, Unilever, Kroger, and many other large retailers and CPG companies. So he's owned, ran, and sold a premier luxury real estate brokerage in Northern California. He has a business degree from UC Berkeley. He's a certified public accountant and just completed the data science and real estate program at MIT with honors. But here's the deal. This is the stuff you're going to hear. Out of all that, he is a diehard Raiders fan. He loves to ski. He's an amateur boxer. I mean, this is the stuff that we're remembering, right? He's a bona fide gym rat. When you call yourself a gym rat, you're serious. And if they ever reopen, by the way, he said if they ever reopen, he'll be a gym rat again. And he's just now taking up jiu-jitsu, only to just try to catch up with his partner, Brad, who's been practicing jiu-jitsu for years. But here's what I love about Brad the most. He shares an affinity with being OCD. Undiagnosed, of course. Maybe Rob's diagnosed OCD, but he likes to call it CDO because CDO is alphabetical. And as an OCD individual, he's CDO. So please join me in welcoming Brad and Rob with Real Estate Backups. And this is going to be an entire show about valuating your company and tips and tricks on kind of just areas to prevent loss economically within your office. And there's just some little things that go unnoticed that really add up over time. You guys all have experienced that. And then also just this opportunity around mergers and acquisitions, because there's office consolidation happening right now. And that's an opportunity for each of our office owners. And then, like I said, nuts and bolts evaluation. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna jump in here, Brad, if you don't mind, and say I was introduced to John L. Scott. I'm gonna guess maybe a year ago at this point, but prior to that, I worked with a guy named Alan Scarce off and on over the years. And Alan is an ex-John L. Scott executive who now lives in Reno, and he raved about John L. Scott the entire time I knew him and worked with him. And now that I've flown up to Seattle and met with these guys and spent a lot of time with them and worked with them, I understand what Alan was talking about. From James Colburn to Phil McBride, Howard Chung, of course, Lennox, Emmanuel, I believe, is on this. These are the most talented real estate company executives, the most talented group I've ever encountered in my life. They're not just smart, they're dedicated, they're honest. And I think the most important thing I saw when I was up there for that day is that Lennox, of course, is an icon in this industry, and he has the entire team focused on the most important thing, and that is how to develop and maintain great relationships with your clients, because this is first and foremost and will always be a relationship business. And all of their technology is focused on that one most important thing as well. So I just want to say, James and the rest of the team, thank you very much for letting us take this this valuable time with you.
Thank you. Appreciate all those words. We'll get you that $5 gift card to Starbucks for that. Thank you again.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
The feeling is mutual. I'll go ahead and share my screen really quickly and see if this works. All right. All right, James, can you see that?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So what we'll do, welcome everyone. We're really grateful for this opportunity. And with your past webinars, you've had some great speakers. We're honored to be here. And this will be more of a traditional webinar format. And if you have any questions whatsoever on a slide, go ahead and type that in chat, and then James can interrupt me as I go through this. But we're really going to talk about how to place a value on a residential real estate brokerage. And instead of just talking about it, we actually want to show you what the process is and explain how we derive a value. And then of course, we'll answer any questions that you may have. So whether you're a numbers person or not, we're going to simplify it. So for today, we're going to start and talk about ultimately what contributes to the value of a company. This topic comes up a lot. We'll answer the question of what is EBITDA, what in the world does that mean? Some of you may know, and some of you may not. And adjusted EBITDA, we'll talk about multiple and all of that. And then with permission, we've taken actual financial statements, we've stripped everything out of them that that would point to a specific company, and we've named that company Acme Real Estate. And so we're going to be going into a financial overview. And this is my favorite part because I'm going to show you actually how to look at numbers differently. You can use this in your own brokerage. A lot of what we'll share today, you can use it for companies that you're looking at buying, and then compare them to your numbers, and we'll show you how we do that. And then just in doing the deals, we really want to give you a list of what questions that you should be asking as you look at companies to buy. And then we're going to end the presentation, and I'm going to show you how we actually place a value on a company, how we come up with that. And then we're going to give you an example of a deal structure. I'll show you how we come up with that really, really works even in times of COVID. So that we'll bring that up as well. So we'll start here. The fundamental question as we start today is what actually contributes to the value of a company. And if you think about it, let's say that you actually have two identical companies on the same, let's put them on the same street, same city. You have ABC and XYZ. And looking at them from the outside, they are identical. They have the same gross commission income. They did the same number of sides last year, exact same number of agents. Their company dollar is the same, and their EBITDA, or their cash flow, is the same. So the question is then, are they the same value? And I'd pose that question to you with a house. Think of right? If you have two homes and they can be in the same neighborhood, and you're just looking on the outside, they have the same square footage and everything looks the same, would they sell for the same price? And you'd just probably say, well, that depends on what's on the inside. And that's exactly the same approach that we take with a company. And so we're looking at overall market presence. You can see there on the right, we're looking at how well the company and even the leaders are known within the market, overall financial stability. Even though these two companies that we're showing you, their numbers appear identical, we don't know if ABC has been consistently doing that, and XYZ they had a huge sale. So we have no idea. We're looking at how well the company operates, what the agent composition of the company, meaning not only the experience of the agents, but really also you're looking at is the owner of the company or owners, are they contributing to the overall value? Do you have just a couple of top agents? Same things. We're looking at that. Look at the strength of leadership, any type of competitive advantages, their business model, sustainability. And I could keep going. These are just examples, but all of that really goes into valuing a company. So we'll start with EBITDA, and it's an acronym, and it stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. You say, okay, what in the world's that? It's a measurement over a 12-month period of time. It's a snapshot of what is the company's net cash flow after you exclude interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's all that is. And we put a lot of stock in it. And so what I want to show you is we're going to jump into Acme Real Estate, and we're going to see with their financials of what we came up with their EBITDA so that you can see an example. So their 2019 TTM stands for trailing 12 month net income was, call it 350,000. They had interest, and this is the net interest between interest expense and interest income. And we add that. So the 350 plus the 2,400 is equal to 351,939. That is considered to be the plain EBITDA by definition. So we take that a step further then. The question is, okay, Brad, is that the number that's normally multiplied? The answer is no. You have what's called pro forma adjustments. Or in the industry, they're colloquially named add backs. And you've got to be careful. So for example, this list right here, you see charitable contributions and automobile and auto lease. Take each expense item, and you've got to ask yourself, looking at it from a buyer standpoint, is that expense going to continue if I own the brokerage? And if the answer is no, then you would add that back. You don't want to be too crazy, but for example, I chose this particular company because they have a number of different add backs, all of them verified. You have to go in, and it's very important that you take a look at that, because what you're ultimately trying to get to is your cash flow. This would be the expected before you start. You can put in your personal expenses and things like that, but this $786,000 number is what's called the adjusted EBITDA. And that is the number that is multiplied. And so with this table, this example is a multiple of either 2.5 all the way to 5.5. Now, I don't want to give anyone any ideas that Brad Clayton did a webinar and the multiples are 2.5 to 5.5. I'm just showing you the differences. And so before we even declare the value, typically within the residential real estate industry in a normal year, let's exclude COVID, you're looking at an average multiple between 3 and 4. Now, there are exceptions to this, but this is generally the range that companies sell at when structuring deals.
And Brad, let me jump in here really quickly. So you might ask, why is real estate a 3 to a 4? And that looks at a number of different factors. For example, just think of some other industries. So computer hardware usually gets around 10 times EBITDA or 10 times cash flow. Tech can be 25 times or higher. In fact, you mean look at companies like Uber, they've never made a penny and they have a high market cap. Software, 25x. An engineering firm, which is also a service-based company, they're around a 4x. So what gets looked at is risk, scalability, growth upside, stability, and competitive barriers to entry. Those are the main things that you look at. And with a tech company, you own the assets. There's a huge competitive barrier to entry if you own unique technology and so on. And what Brad's going to show you today is we're going to take a different route. And instead of saying it's a 3 to a 4, we're going to go around the block and come at it from another direction and see where we end up.
Yep, exactly. Rob, thank you. Now, a lot of times we're seeing, for example, we'll get into this example, but typically larger company don't focus so much on the multiple. I can show you examples where it was the company sold for a 4.5 multiple, but their EBITDA was really, really low because they made adjustments. And you don't want to get caught up at all in what the multiple is. I can also show you examples where the company sells for a 2, but it's very high. It just depends. It's a simple calculation. So if you can't tell, I'm actually not a big fan of EBITDA because it doesn't explain enough. But it's popular because it's very simple to calculate. Any questions right here? Okay, I'll continue. So, go ahead.
This is James again. I just wanted to jump in and just, for those folks on the call and on Facebook that are agents and brokers and not owners of real estate firms. This is interesting stuff. Just kind of understand the nuts and bolts of real estate office ownership. There's some people in our network that have been thinking, or someday down the road would look at office ownership as an opportunity to kind of take their business to the next level. So don't check out now if there is any interest on office ownership. Certainly these two guys can be very integral in that process.
Yeah, James, thank you so much. That is a good, for the agents on the call, you're thinking, okay, does this apply to me? Actually, I'll show you, if you're interested, I'll show you how your production actually can contribute to the value of a company, and understanding that can be incredibly helpful. But thank you. So the question really is, does the past predict the future? And I'll go back a slide. Is the company going to continue to do $786,000 approximately per year? And the answer is probably not, right? We need to take a deeper dive. And so when you're looking at a company, you want to examine absolutely everything. Ask a lot of questions. It looks a little bit like this. You're taking an X-ray. That's like the financial statement analysis and digging into the numbers and figuring everything out. But in doing a deal, I found that if you just focus on this, it's not enough. It's more so, it looks a little bit more like this, right? You've got to really take the time to understand the brokerage that you're looking at buying. And unfortunately, that step is missed a lot. You can't. It's interesting because today is a lot about, I'm giving you examples with numbers, but that's only a piece of it. And sometimes it looks a little bit like this. If you look at this, this is classic, right? You've got to make sure that you understand if numbers adjust downward, why, or upward, right? So let's go into Acme, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So this is just taking from their financial statements, and it's taking some quick snapshots so that we could take a look at compare. And so the first thing I want to share with you today is compare everything. If you just take 1 year and you look at numbers, there's no comparison point. You'll see throughout the presentation, I get this question a lot, sparkline. And that's actually an Excel term. What it is, though, it's a graphical representation of what what the line is doing. So it started at 14 million, that came up a little bit, and then went back down, and that's what the spark line is doing. And so if you look at in 2018, first thing that jumps out as I compare them is operating revenues dropped, company dollar dropped by $400,000, and their operating income was steady. But look at their adjusted EBITDA. That went from 1.1 million to 773,000. And so when you're looking at a financial statement and comparing everything, you're picking out the anomalies. Don't make any assumptions yet. We have to dig further, but make a note of that and say, okay, I've got to figure out what happened in 2018 with this company. And total agent count surprisingly went up. So 2017, 365, 2018, 370. So if agent count is going up and the operating revenues are going down, what's going on? What happened? Similarly, in 2017 to 18, you'll see that the total sales volume, this is in thousands, so that's 598 million. Sales volume dropped, gross commission dropped, total closed sides dropped, yet agent count is going up. So once again, you'll make a note of that. And then this is something that, these are just a couple of things that we take a look at frequently as we value companies. And it's something that you can actually do in your own brokerage. I'm not going to go through every single example. I'll just show you a couple of ones that are really easy to calculate that I really like. The first one is their profit margin. So you take their expenses and exclude any add backs that you have and divide that by your company dollar, or its gross profit. It's the same term. And you'll notice in 2016, they were just below 81% of their expenses represented from their revenue, but then it shot up. And so you'll make a note of that. Same thing here, adjusted EBITDA expectedly went down. And their net income, this is a calculation that I actually recommend that you do with your brokerage to take a look at. This is taking your company dollar per agent. So you take, after you pay the agents, you take your company dollar and you just divide it by your total agents that have done at least one deal. Don't include if you have like referral agents or anything like that. Just to get a real average, say, okay, each agent normally is generating $12,733. You'll do the same thing with expenses. You take the total expenses divided by the agent count and then subtract that from what they're generating. And you'll notice that, so expenses have clearly gone up because in 2016, it was $2,700 per agent that the company was making. And then in 2019, trailing 12 months, it dropped by $1,000. So now we're starting to see that pattern. We have to understand why. So you can start forming questions from that.
Hey, Brad.
Yep.
Let me just jump in and say something for the agents who are watching. Obviously, Brad, Clayton, and I are nerds. We can't help it. We've never met a number or an analysis or a ratio we didn't love. And if you're an agent, you can think about your business a little bit this way as well. You can think about average sales price, number of days from list to closing escrow on average year over year. And you can start measuring the effectiveness and the efficiency of different parts of your business, and it'll tell you where to focus and where not to focus. So this at least general approach applies to everything in business. Go ahead, Brian.
What I love about that too is just the reminder that for small and mid-sized teams that are within John L. Scott or in the industry, this is a super great way to kind of start approaching your business and reviewing it and actually figuring out your ratios along these in these areas. So
if you don't measure it, you can't manage it.
That's right. That's exactly right. This is one we've actually just started using this year. And it's a great comparison point when you're looking at buying a brokerage, because you can do this with your brokerage and compare it. So you take your occupancy square footage, so your total square feet in the offices that you have, divide that by your total agent count. And you'll see here that it's trending downward. That's good. New recruits needed. This is just a mark, right? To say, okay, if we want to be under 90 square feet per agent, how many agents do we need to recruit to achieve that? And then if I take all of my rent costs, so rent, CAM, parking, you can add utilities in there. What is that if I were to divide that by my total agent count? What is that? And you'll see that it's dropping, it's fluctuating here a little bit, but you can tell that this particular company is doing a good job. And you'll find that if you compare that to a company that you're buying, and let's say that their occupancy per agent is like $2,500, you'll know that there's a disparity there. Same in similar manner, agents to staff ratio. this number, you look at it was 11 agents per staff in 2016, and it's dropping. That's not a good sign. So think of it like this: if you have 100 agents and 100 staff members, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. You actually want this number going up. And so this particular company, they're increasing their staff, but they're not growing their agent count. Same thing. We just take a look at this. If you take the gross profit of the company or the company dollar and divide that by the total employees, what does that look like? And so you see in 2016, it was 155,000 and it dropped down. Once again, alone, these don't tell us a lot, but all together, the numbers, just pulling them off a spreadsheet, and if you're not an Excel whiz and you lay all the numbers out and you just start making quick calculations, you can make that comparison point to see how the company's actually functioning. And I have found that the numbers will actually start telling a story, and I love it. And that's what you're trying to get to. So you do not need an eye test for this. I want to show one quick thing. So this is taking the income statement and looking at percentages. And when I zoom in, you'll look at something very important. So this particular company, they've been running a real estate school for 40 years. Look at the expense, and the expenses before the income. So in 2016, it was costing the company $102,000 and they were making 99. So call it about break even. But you'll see here that in 2000, their expenses are rising, but their income is declining. It's not a good sign. Now, as a buyer, you might think, well, let's just kill that, right? That will give me an extra $100,000+ that I can then use towards the company. And while that may be true, you don't know if those recruits are helping to boost the company. And so maybe they're, instead of killing the whole thing, you look at that as an opportunity to grow it. But definitely, if you're a buyer, this is something that's good, because if you can run that more efficiently, the day that all of you on the call know that when you make your money when you buy a home, not when you sell it, right? You want to make it on the buy. It's the same thing with a company. This is good because it gives you that opportunity. So as you think about things like that, those are just some very brief examples. I've actually cut those down. There are several about the company. We really want to go into, okay, what types of questions then should I be asking? So as I've compared this information, what does that look like? So in some operating questions, and we've already asked some of these, but you want to take a look and say, okay, which way is the gross revenue trending? Why? Are the expenses increasing or decreasing? And same thing, I can follow up every question with why. And should the company be spending in an area that it's currently not spending? This is a gotcha. So when you're taking a look at a company, and let's say that they have a really, really high EBITDA, they have a high net cash flow, but they're not spending any money on agents. They're not spending money on technology. They are just running their brokerage in a bare bones fashion. You've got to take a look at that and look at it from your standpoint of what it will cost you to run their model, and not from their standpoint. I hope that makes sense.
And Brad, let me jump in here again. Even if you're the owner of a real estate brokerage and you're not planning on selling, these are all great questions to ask yourself every year. And getting a valuation like this is a little bit like going to a physician and getting a full physical, full health checkup. You're going to learn things that you are happy to hear, and you might find out, you're deficient in vitamin D or something. So, take some more or get out in the sun a little bit. And if you're a real estate agent, the same thing. It's just good to take stock of your business once a year and ask questions about how you can do things a little bit more efficiently, a little bit better. Are there things you can continue and do more of, things you should decrease a little bit? So this applies even if you're not in an M&A mode.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rob. Is the company benefiting from a unique circumstance? That's also very important. And this might be coming up shortly. But for example, if if REO sales are really high. With new construction, I've seen that happen a lot, where the companies in the market with a brand new golf course, there's a bunch of construction going up. How long is that going to last? You want to take a look at that. Does the company have a high dependency on supplemental or ancillary income, like property management, in certain states, title, escrow, mortgage? I've seen home warranty, a bunch of fees that are charged. You want to take a look at all of that. And I'll make this comment that if you take all of that supplemental income out and the real estate brokerage is operating at a negative, it's not necessarily a warning sign, but it is a sign that the brokerage can be run more efficiently. And so as a buyer, you really want to take stock in that. You'll need to take a look and see if you'll need to make any adjustments in salaries. You'll look at the differences, and this is a big one. I've had deals that the two companies, the owners just love each other. They want to do a deal, but their fee structure, their commission plans are just so far apart that they can't make it work. You've got to take a look at that culturally, all right? Also take a look at, very important, what is their file review process? What is their E&O claims history? These are questions that typically aren't answered or asked, I should say. And it gives you a sense of how well the company is performing and also providing service to its agents. And then take a look at potential market threats. For example, and this is happening right now with a couple of sales that we're working on, a competitor has moved into the markets, taking away all the agents, and the owners, they're done. And so you've got to take a look at that and say, okay, under my brokerage, would that happen? All questions to ask. With agent questions, and shout out to the agents here, these are important questions, but like I said earlier, what is the overall agent composition of the company? Especially look for if it's a smaller company and the owner is contributing to, they're taking their commissions and they're leaving them in the company. You want to really, really be careful with that kind of stuff and take a look at it. You want to take a look at, and these are all questions that typically are not asked, but what is the relationship between key leadership and agents? So if you have an owner that's really, really involved with his or her agents, has a good relationship, knows about them, is communicating with them often, that typically those transitions go really, really well versus someone who is just at arm's length, everything. The manager has the entire relationship, but the owner doesn't. Those can cause some issues. And so you really want to dig into those types of relationships. I already answered or spoke about this key leadership cell. You want to ask yourself, could the company survive without leadership selling? This is another one, and companies have been caught with this. So do the owners of the company, for example, this happens with a lot of really high producers, and they're so busy that they actually give agents referrals all day long. And so you've got a group of agents that are receiving these referrals. The question is though, and typically that owner wants to sell because they just want to focus on their own business. They're very busy. And you have to ask yourself, okay, is that current owner going to continue to give referrals to the agents if they're just focused on their own business? And if not, are those agents going to stay? So it's a little riskier. You'll take a look at agent retention, which agents have left the company, if there's a pattern. So you'll want to see at least the past 3 years of agent production and find out who stayed, what types of agents have left, why they've left. Most owners will say, well, we've gotten rid of the non-producing agents. It's usually not true. You want to really dig into that. Is there a change in the behavior? For example, this is a telltale sign if you have a top producer and over the past 12 months, they've really, really, they're not selling as much. Typically that's a sign that they're getting ready to leave or there's a health issue. I've had both happen, find out about that. And then this one comes up a lot, more so in California, but If agents contribute to E&O premiums, when does that renew? Sometimes you have to, if the agents just paid like a big annual sum to E&O, and now they have to come on to a new plan, you'll have to take that into an account. But the key question, I know that's a lot of questions, the key question in this whole thing is the business sustainable? And that's why looking at EBITDA is not enough. It doesn't tell you the full picture.
Hey, I want to jump in real quick. Is this a good spot? We have a few questions out there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, please.
Zoom as well as Facebook Live. But for starters, Nick, could you introduce Mona's question?
Yes. So Mona has a question. Brad, you had talked about making your money on the buy and equated that with buying a house. Could you explain a little more on what you meant by that?
Yes. So for an example, similar to a home, if you buy the home at the right time. So for an example, here in Arizona right now, anything under $500,000, average sales price in the Phoenix metro area it's still under 300. It's about $250,000. Any home right now under $500,000 is on the market for a couple of days. They're being snapped up. However, if the market were to decline a little bit and you can go and you buy that same home for a little bit less, then my comment is now you're making money on the buy, meaning that if you were to turn around and wait for the market to improve and you go back and sell that home, you'll sell it for a greater amount. So in my example with the company, if there are areas as a buyer that you know that you can operate that company more efficiently, the expenses aren't going to be as high, then you're buying value, because you could buy it for, let's say, $1 million, and if you could turn around the very next day and sell it for $1.2 million, that's what I meant by you make money on the buy.
Yeah, Brad, I'll add that the most important phrase in business, I think, is no thank you.
Yeah.
And the best deals I've ever done are the ones I didn't do.
I love it.
I know those are colloquialisms, but it's really true. And then one thing I learned a long time ago is the person who wants it more in a deal is the person who loses, typically.
You know,
James?
let's have Sandy just unmute. Probably the best. Sandy has a few questions. Sandy owns several offices in the Columbia Gorge area of Oregon, Washington. So Sandy, if you could unmute, we'd love to hear your questions.
Thanks, James. Good morning.
Good morning, Sandy.
Thank you.
I don't know that I had any questions. I didn't type any, but it's interesting. I was thinking during the presentation, how do you take into account capital improvements during the last 12 months or 4 years? Are those add backs?
Capital improvements are typically on the balance sheet, so no, they're not.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I had that completely wrong. It was actually the Columbia Basin region that came to us with some questions. But Sandy, that you had a question on the fly and came off of mute to say it, I really appreciate that.
No problem, James. Thanks.
But Sandy, when I get to, and it's just a few slides, I'll get to what actually goes into the value of a company, how you derive that. Then they're treated a little differently, and I'll show how that works.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
All right.
Any other?
John L. Scott, Columbia Basin, any questions for the team here?
Yeah, I did, James. Thanks. So a couple of years ago, we bought Universal Realty in Hermiston, Oregon.
Okay.
And I guess my question centers around when we purchased the company, we had 11 agents. When at the end of the first 4 months, we had 6.
Okay.
And they were a combination of heavy producers that left and also really non-producers. So thankfully, we're kind of left with that middle tier, which was great. But in your formula, how do you adjust for those potential losses?
I'll show you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's actually, James, that's a perfect lead-in question, but I'll show you exactly how we do that.
Awesome.
Okay. Can I ask you just a couple others that maybe you'll lead into there too? One of them is that do you make any adjustments in your methodology based on size? Risk adjustments, whether you're buying a company with 9 agents versus 25?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then one of the things that we did is we were looking at a company. We couldn't make it happen, but basically what I did is I separated the sales brokerage side from the property management side and gave it to, you know, would that be a proper thing to do?
Yes.
And then my final question was in regards to a margin. I am a former banker, so obviously I hate numbers, but but I will admit that I love the story.
Right.
And so maybe the reason for these questions, but anyway, I used RMA because in the banking, it's all about efficiency because the margins are so low. And so I used the RMA, the Risk Management Association, to
Right.
come up with a margin on efficiency for a real estate office. And the number was somewhere between like 12 and 15%. I don't know if you have a number.
I do, and typically it's higher than that right now. And
Okay.
So I'll show you. These are perfect questions, and so some of you on the Zoom right now may be wondering, you know, what you're referring to, and I'll go into that because all of that is how the value is actually correctly derived.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Not
Thank
a problem. Yeah, those are perfect.
Great setup.
All right, I like it, and we're almost there. So we're pretty much through with the numbers, except for just coming up and structuring a deal. And we'll go back to them just as an example. But I get this question a lot right now. And what about the effect of COVID-19? And does that mean that if I'm a real estate owner and that suddenly my brokerage is worth a lot less or half? And the question you have to be asking yourself is, with COVID-19, let's compare, what is that compared to? So for an example, is the issue specific to a brokerage or the market or the real estate industry specifically, or is it a general economic change? And with COVID-19, it's really a general economic change. So it's not like when COVID-19 first hit, and I was thinking, how in the world am I going to forecast this? Because we truly don't know what is going to happen. Now that we have a better understanding, we can build some assumptions into that. But unlike a natural disaster like an earthquake or a volcano, or trying to think of things that would hit in the Northwest, right? A natural disaster, those usually take time, historically 6 to 8 months to rebuild. I had believe it or not, I was doing a deal in Hawaii and a volcano went off right in the middle of the deal, 2 days before closing. And it wiped out 40% of the homes in the primary market that the broker was selling. So that was fun. But COVID is a general economic change. And so we're going to treat it as such. It doesn't mean that it's going to last forever. And so it doesn't have the same effect on your value as losing a bunch of agents or something like that. So in placing a value on a company, and we're leading into this, everything is dependent upon forecasting, because partially you're buying a company for what it's done. But think of yourself as an investor. You're not going to give money to a cause or someone for what they've necessarily done. You're investing in what the company is going to give back to you in the future. And so because of that, you've got to take a look at the numbers and then start making some assumptions. Take all the expenses and the operating revenues and forecast those and see, well, where am I going to end up underneath my brokerage operations? So zooming in, if we were to take a look at, this is 2018 actual, the A stands for actual, 2019 trailing 12-month actual, and this right here is the company dollar. This is because we did this in 2019, we estimated it for E, and you'll see on purpose, I wanted to show you what the effects of COVID did. So we've since readjusted this to say there's a dip. And then in 2021, 2022, the market's actually coming back in this particular area. You'll see that the company is expected to perform similar to in this example, 2019, right? And so we're just trying to get a sense of, under normal circumstances, what does that look like? So that's step one. And then we're going to do the same thing with looking at the adjusted EBITDA. So all of those items on the very few first slides that we showed you that we took out, we've kept them out, those expenses, and we say, okay, operating underneath my brokerage, meaning the buyer, what can I reasonably expect the expenses to be? And you'll see that in 2021, we're being very conservative, right? It was at 773, 786, and we're saying, okay, it's going to come back up. And this number is important because it represents estimated cash flow. And this is the screen. You don't necessarily need a finance degree. I'll just explain what's going on here. I'll zoom in. But in taking those cash flows, so the 202, the 576, the 701, these are what we're estimating. We have to come up with a value to those. Say, well, if I were to buy that today, what is 701,000 and 576,000 in today's dollars? And we do that by looking at a risk rate. And this is what he was referring to. So for example, the 12 to 15%, let me back up. The higher this rate, look at this as a required return. So for an example, if an investor is going to pay ultimately $2.6 million for the fair market value of a company, and this is saying this is the required return at 24%, that they need to achieve to get that. And that's based on the overall risk associated with obtaining those cash flows. So this company is actually pretty average. A higher company, greater risk. If we were to increase this number to say 30%, this value would drop. And so what this does is I'm adding these cash flows and I'm taking the present value. And stick with me, we don't need to go into great detail, but just understand that we're estimating what the company is going to continue to do and applying a value to that based on the level of risk. So we're adding, the company's not going to stop after 2022, so we're going to add that. Mortgage MSAs, typically we don't apply the dollar value because there's so much regulation with that. We typically just add that. If you add these three numbers together, you come up with the fair market value of the company after taking everything else into an account. And going back to Sandy's question about what about capital contributions, lease improvements, things like that, that actually is built into the risk rate here. So for example, if the offices they're just a place that agents absolutely love to come, it creates a recruiting advantage, and you know that you can recruit additional agents because of that, then this number is going to drop, which will give a higher value. And the way that you get the multiple then, just as a check, is you divide that, the 2.6 million, this is the derived number, divided by adjusted EBITDA, and that's how you come up with the 3.31 multiple. And then we have to ask ourselves, okay, does that make sense? And if it doesn't, we have to go back and say, okay, our assumptions are off. But it's important to back into it and figure, let the multiple come out rather than us just saying, we'll pay a 3 for it. And then this, I think this is the last, this is a table. It shows the different discount rates. So the rate of required return. So here's the 2.6 million right in the middle. Let's say that we're off, or we're conservative, and the company does $50,000 more per year in free cash flow than what we are generating. So we agree to a price of the 2.6, but it's actually worth 2.8 million. And going back to, that's how you make money on the buy. Similarly, if the company produces less, let's say that we're too aggressive, then it does $50,000 less per year, then it would go, you're paying 2.6 million for a company that's worth just under 2.4 million. And this table just shows all of the different values that could happen. So for this company, depending on the buyer, an offer of anywhere from 2.2 all the way up to 3, this is really high, but somewhere in that range would be an acceptable fair market value. And so taking all of this information, how in the world do we structure a deal with that? And going back to, and I apologize, forget the gentleman's name that we were just speaking with from Columbia River Gorge.
Yeah, that was Dennis.
Dennis. All right. So Dennis, going back to your question, if I take my adjusted EBITDA and I take my cash flows, really what I want to do is, these numbers are so important. Before you say I'm willing to pay X, you've got to take a look at what the business is expected to do. And so, and I'll show you how you configure that with a deal structure. So first things, right? You want to look at, what are my funding sources? How much capital do I have access to? Or SBA, I've done a number of SBA deals. Just depends, right? If you have a war chest or something like that, you can actually structure deals if you're smart about it. It doesn't take as much money up front as you would think. It just depends on what the buyer and seller are willing to do. And that goes into my next question. What are the seller expectations? What's your risk tolerance? How conservative are you? Is this a cash versus an earnout, which I'll explain, versus just writing somebody a note? Is this an asset purchase, which is 99%? You're just purchasing the assets of the real estate brokerage versus buying stock into the brokerage? Or is this a merger, meaning that the two companies, if you have ABC and XYZ, a merger would be, the new company is ABC XYZ Real Estate. You just merge them together, operating under their respective names. And acquisition is actually ABC buys XYZ and they become ABC. I hope you guys are, I'm not acronyming you to death, if that's the word. And then, or is it a joint venture, meaning that you buy, say, it's a 50-50 joint venture, or a 60-40, meaning you own 60%, they own 40%, you own 51%, they own 49%. There are all sorts of different ways that you can structure deals. But let's go with structuring a very simple deal. And what we're going to do is begin with the end and then work backwards, similar to how we came up with EBITDA. So to do that, we're going to decide on the deal structure. And in this example that I'm going to give you, we'll do a cash up front plus an earnout. And then we need to determine our offer price. So we're going to look at the 2.6 million. Okay. And with that, I'm going to go back to taking a look at my key figures. So I'm going to look at my adjusted EBITDA here. And I'm going to divide that by my company dollar just to see what is the percentage. And you can see every year the different percentages. And so you say, okay, if I'm willing to give away half of that money, so I want to structure a deal and I want to give half of my estimated cash flows, this is what that would be. And so you can see that this represents almost 8%, 3%, 6%, 7% of company dollar. And that's how you can start coming up with putting together your deal. So once you do that, you say, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 7% of company dollar for 5 years, provided that it does at least 4.3 million in that the company is above 4.3 million. So just a quick calculation, that's roughly $320,000 per year, which is $1.6 million. So that would mean that you'd have to come up with $1 million in cash. You can also create a contingency earnout where it's if the company dollar drops, that you build in some security and say, if it drops because the agent count drops, I'm not going to pay you the 7%, I'm going to pay you the 2.5%. So Dennis, that's an example to your question. And now, I'm not suggesting that you have to come up with $1 million for every deal or a deal like this. This is typical. If you were to say, I only can pay, say, $750,000, then you would extend this earnout. So it just depends, right? But that will give you at least an idea of where to start. So going back to our fundamental question, I know I'm short on time, but are the two companies, are they the same value, ABC, XYZ? Probably not, right? Every single company is different. And so that's why you want to really look at what is driving its value. And that is it. So for everyone on this webinar, James, before we turn it over back to you, if you go to this link, just for being and lasting through all the numbers, we're going to give our guide away. Typically, this is something that people pay for. But if you go to that link, rebackops.com/valuation guide, it's right on our website. You can download that for free.
All right. That's incredible value, and also obviously I emailed everyone earlier today within our franchise network with contact information for you, but I'm sure you'd be happy to grab a call with any one of our owners, correct? And answer questions or whatnot through email or whatever, correct? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We gave you a taste, but there's a lot more. Obviously, there's several more slides that we haven't been able to get through. There's oftentimes webinar opportunities for a little bit longer presentation. So if there's interest in that, certainly reach out to Brad or Rob or myself, and we'll make sure to make that available to you. Aaron, I think you had one question out there with our Facebook Live group.
Yeah, sorry, let me take myself off mute. I first just wanted to share a little bit of feedback we got from John Walsh. He had said, love this stuff. It takes me back to business school and reminds me of all the metrics I've forgotten to use in analyzing the profitability of my own business as a broker. So I think that was a pleasant little surprise for John there. One question for you, for both of you. What is a common area of business that you often find brokers, teams, or companies can improve their efficiency on? So maybe an area that you see, potential for improvement in a lot of different businesses that you evaluate.
Oh, Aaron, that's a perfect question. Rob, do you want to take that, since I've done the lion's share of what we work on?
I would say, again, going back to the you make money when you buy. The key expenses for a real estate brokerage, of course, are personnel and occupancy. And so I think typically brokerages have gotten, a big footprint, kind of the traditional brokerage. And I think a lot of real estate brokerages are taking another look at that right now. And especially in our current health and economic climate, it's a good time to reevaluate your space, renegotiate leases. I know that there have been some rent deferments. Those can all be negotiated in different ways. So I would just take a hard look at people and occupancy.
Technology is another one. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Thanks.
Well, on behalf of John L. Scott, Facebook Friday, our team, Lennox Scott, our moderators, Nick, and just really appreciate the two of you and the work that you do and the value that you have provided to John L. Scott thus far. We look forward to continuing a relationship with the Rebackops, and obviously this is an incredible opportunity for all of our real estate offices across the 4 states to take a close look at their financial metrics, totally, but then also just from a periodic appraisal is certainly helpful in keeping our eye on the ball in terms of effectiveness and profitability. So I really, really appreciate the two of you giving us a taste of what it means to evaluate and reminding us that it's way more than EBITDA. That buzzword is so overly used as a valuation model, and yet there's so much more. I did get one comment. It was through a text that one of our owners felt that, Brad, you look like Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. It actually works really, really well based on what you guys do. And you guys forensically review real estate companies. You catch things that even the sharpest real estate mind might not see, because, we're too close. And so you're able to catch it from afar. Like you said, look at it, measure it, and then not be scared of it, but make some very, very key shifts. And you do that with big and small companies across the country. So and then with steeped experience in the industry and both owning as well as working for for Realogy, obviously. So combined, this is a huge opportunity for John L. Scott as we grow. And speaking of growing, I just want to give Kellen, who's sitting behind me in the sell a house, sell a house, get a raise shirt. Kellen, I just wanted him to speak to us real quickly about his brokerage and the opportunities in Southern California. But Rob and Brad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Yeah.
So Kellen, take the floor.
Thanks a lot. Rob, it's great to see you again. And Brad, thanks again. You guys were awesome. This was killer. I am the owner of John L. Scott Premier in Southern California, the newest John L. Scott. Super exciting. We set up our headquarters in Orange County, Newport Beach. I'm going to show James a taste of the good life by taking him to Balboa Bay Club after this for lunch. But I just wanted to, on the tail end of this, just kind of discuss, the opportunities that are down here. And you have a team, you have a partnership here. And while we're based in Orange County, we pretty much serve anywhere from Los Angeles down through, Anaheim, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Costa Mesa, all the way down into San Diego, out to Temecula, Palm Springs. So we kind of have taken our brokerage model and we've done this. It's almost a hybrid virtual model. So we have agents who can service the area. We'd love to be great referral partners for you. And as we're talking about the valuation of companies, two of my owners are John L. Scott members up in the beautiful state of Washington. And so if anybody's ever considering, hey, maybe I want to get my foot in the door in Southern California, there are franchise opportunities that we're looking at. And obviously, James, Howard, myself, Nick, anybody that you'd like to speak with about those opportunities, we'd love to have a few more of you down here. And in the meantime, my email, if you need anything from me, is first name, last name, Kellen Porter, johnlscott.com, and I'm at 949-333-9147. I look forward to meeting all of you who I haven't met yet in the very near future, and I'm just really excited for the growth and momentum John L. Scott has here in Southern California.
I'm just going to roll over here and take this opportunity to also introduce two other people who let us use their office today. This is the owners of Ocean Collective. We are social distancing. They have a virtual mask on, but Bud and Johanna actually came up and visited us for our Discovery Day to learn more about John L. Scott, and they're not going away. Right, Johanna?
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Hey guys,
we call these two
Scott.
Boohana, Bud and Johanna. It's kind of like the Ben Affleck. What's
Bennifer.
Bennifer, yeah.
Oh,
but these two, you're going to hear more about them and John L. Scott in the upcoming future. So, how's that for an assumptive close, everyone?
Very assumptive. I love it. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you so much for letting us use your office. And I just wanted to just have Nick really quick promote the industry forum on August 27th for those of you that see that. I mean, I know it will be valuable, but Nick, could you just explain how registration works there and a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, James. So John L. Scott is going to be hosting another industry forum, as James says, next Thursday, August 27th from 11 to 12:30. We have a couple featured speakers. This is all going to be taking place on the John L. Scott Facebook page. Our keynote speaker is Simon Bailey. He's an author and a speaker for Peak Performance, and he's going to be talking about creating a culture where everyone matters. And then we also have another speaker, Dr. Lee Davenport. Her talk is going to be There Goes the Neighborhood, the History of Race and Ownership. So will be a good time to get together, get some more perspectives. You can register on our John L. Scott Facebook page, and all the information is there. So look forward to having everyone join us, and we will see you next Thursday.
So on behalf of John L. Scott and our entire team, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. Actually, next week we have Ron Medbit from the Pacific Institute, and he'll be coming to us for an hour all around positive mindset and how to grow our businesses and be powerful and get out of our own way. So please join us next week at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we look forward to seeing you all here.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Again.